Hello, this is Justin Neill, and today I'll be looking at ethical clarity in the VW emissions scandal. First, I'm going to take a look at the scandal, what caused the scandal, and then finally review lessons learned. In order to understand the scandal, we'll review what the scandal was, then look at the who, the how, and the why it happened, and finally review the ramifications of the scandal. In 2015, the EPA reported that Volkswagen engines contained defeat devices that changed the performance of the engine when the engine was undergoing emissions tests. Engineers had programmed the engine to change performance to meet the emission standards only when being tested. VW diesel engines were not as environmentally friendly as advertised, and so VW was lying to the public. The scandal was a result of leadership giving the engineers two distinct directives. First, to create high-performance engines to meet certain specifications, and second, to make sure the vehicles passed emissions tests. It's important to note that there's a big difference between passing tests and meeting the expectations of the emissions tests. Finally, engineers were evaluated against these two directives. This scandal was a result of incentives and pressure to meet the two directives, opportunity, lack of oversight or direction, and a shortcut to achieve both directives, and rationalization, our jobs depended on it. The diesel emissions scandal has cost Volkswagen an estimated $25 billion in fines, fees, recall work, and lost sales. There's also been 9 managers who have been suspended or fired. There's been a negative impact throughout the supply chain, and Volkswagen's lost the trust of the public. The Volkswagen diesel emissions scandal has been the result of a lack of clarity and a lack of intentionality by leadership at Volkswagen. First, Volkswagen leadership failed to clarify that engines should meet both specifications for performance and emissions. Second, they failed to clarify there's a difference between passing emissions tests and meeting the emissions standards. And finally, Volkswagen has failed to clarify corporate values and expectations. When it comes to intentionality, Volkswagen leadership failed to be intentional about corporate values and standards and emphasized goal achievement and performance over meeting corporate values and standards. They failed to protect shareholders and stakeholders in the company, and they failed to own the decisions of their employees. As leaders, it's important that we learn lessons from the successes and failures of other companies. In the case of the Volkswagen emissions scandal, I think we can learn lessons around clarity and intentionality, and learn about taking extreme ownership for the decisions made within our organization. Leaders need to be clear about the laws, rules, and expectations in their organization and be intentional about speaking directly to their employees about these. Leaders should clarify expectations by defining, first, laws that govern the organization. Second, the corporate values and expectations. These can be through things like mission statements, corporate guidelines, corporate principles, and corporate handbooks. Individual leaders should then share their expectations and their direction with those who they lead. And finally, they should be clear about the potential ramifications of not upholding these expectations. Quite possibly the biggest failure in the Volkswagen emissions scandal was a lack of extreme ownership by the leaders in the corporation. Extreme ownership is taking full responsibility of any outcome your team generates. In their book, Extreme Ownership, Willink and Babin describe extreme ownership as taking the view that if anyone was to blame or fired for what happened, let it be me. In an extreme ownership view, the leader is so clear and intentional about his or her expectations that the group can be trusted to make the decision they would make. And the leader accepts that if the wrong decision was made, they were unclear about their expectations. Taking this view within Volkswagen could have stopped engineers from making decisions that leaders didn't agree with. Clarity, intentionality, and extreme ownership were all lacking at Volkswagen and led to the emissions scandal. As leaders, we should strive for these things in our organizations and in the groups we lead. I appreciate your time today.